What if I told you that deep in the Arizona wilderness in 1880, a lumberjack heard something strange in the woods, only to find a young Apache girl tied to a tree, abandoned and terrified? What happened next would test everything he believed about right and wrong, and lead them both down a path that neither could have imagined. This story isn't about cowboys or outlaws. It's about a man trying to bury his past, a girl ripped from her people, and the moment their worlds collided. But why was she left there in the first place? And what made this man risk everything to help her? Thank you so much for watching and for all your comments. Let me know at the end if you like the story, and where you're watching from and why you're following this. The morning sun cast long shadows across the rugged Arizona landscape as William Harker swung his axe against a sturdy pine. At 53, his body ached more with each passing season, but the rhythm of his work remained unchanged. Sweat trickled down his weathered face, despite the autumn chill that had settled over the mountains. 5 years had passed since he'd retreated to this isolated cabin after losing his wife and daughter to typhoid, and the solitude had become as much a part of him as his calloused hands. William paused, resting the axe head against the ground, as he surveyed the forest surrounding his small clearing. Something felt different today. The usual morning calls of birds had gone silent, replaced by an unsettling stillness that prickled the back of his neck. Following his instincts, he secured his axe to his belt and moved deeper into the woods, his footsteps nearly silent from years of hunting. The snap of a twig brought him to a halt. William crouched low, scanning the underbrush until his eyes landed on a disturbing sight that made his stomach turn. Tied to a massive oak, bound by coarse rope that cut into her wrists, was a girl no older than 12. Her dark hair hung in matted tangles around a face streaked with dirt and tears. The traditional Apache clothing she wore was torn and soiled, speaking of days of harsh treatment. "Good Lord," William whispered, approaching slowly with his hands, raised to show he meant no harm. The girl's eyes, wide with terror, tracked his every movement. When he came within 10 feet, she began thrashing against her restraints, unleashing a torrent of words in Apache that he couldn't understand, though their meaning was clear enough. "Easy now," he said softly. "I'm not going to hurt you." He pointed to the ropes, then made a cutting motion with his hand. "I'm going to get you free." Her struggles intensified as he approached, but William moved deliberately, drawing a small knife from his pocket. "It's all right," he continued, his voice low and steady, like he'd once used to calm spooked horses. "Those bastards who did this, they're gone now." The girl went rigid as the knife blade touched the first rope, but William worked quickly, sawing through the rough fibers. As the bonds fell away, he could see the raw, bleeding skin beneath. Anger flared in his chest. He'd heard stories of settlers capturing native children, but had never witnessed such cruelty firsthand. When the final restraint fell away, the girl stumbled backward, nearly collapsing before catching herself against the tree trunk. William stepped back, giving her space, and offered his canteen. "Water," he said simply, setting it on the ground between them before retreating another step. Minutes passed in tense silence before desperation overcame fear, and the girl lunged for the canteen, drinking deeply while keeping her eyes fixed on him. William noticed the bruises on her arms, the gauntness of her face that spoke of days without proper food. "My cabin's not far," he said, pointing north. "Food, shelter." He mimicked eating and made a roof shape with his hands, knowing she likely understood little English. "Or I can take you to town." Even as he said it, William knew what that would mean. The girl would be handed over to authorities who'd likely sent her to one of those government schools where they stripped away everything that made her Apache. The girl's gaze darted between William and the dense forest surrounding them. Freedom beckoned, but her weakened state was obvious. Whatever decision she might have made was interrupted by the distant sound of men's voices and horses approaching. "Settlers," William muttered, recognizing the danger immediately. Without thinking, he gestured urgently for her to follow him. "Come. Not safe." Understanding danger transcended language barriers. The girl hesitated only a moment before falling in behind William as he led her swiftly through the trees, away from the approaching voices. They moved in silence, the old lumberman occasionally glancing back to ensure she was keeping pace despite her obvious exhaustion. By the time they reached his small cabin nestled against the mountainside, the girl was barely standing. William ushered her inside, quickly gathering blankets and laying them before the hearth where embers still glowed from morning's fire. "Rest," he said, adding logs to revive the flames. "You're safe here." The girl sank onto the blankets, her body finally surrendering to exhaustion, though she positioned herself where she could watch both William and the door. Her eyes, despite their wariness, held a question that needed no translation. "My name is William," he said, placing a hand on his chest. "William Harker." After a long moment, the girl mirrored his gesture, pressing her palm against her own heart. "Luna," she whispered, her voice rough from disuse. William nodded, something long, dormant stirring in his chest as he turned to prepare a simple stew. In the silence of his cabin, broken only by the crackling fire and the soft sounds of cooking, the old lumberman pondered what twist of fate had brought this child to his door and what storms might follow in her wake. Outside, the sun continued, its arc across the sky, indifferent to the unlikely alliance forming below. In the distance, riders searched the forest, their calls to each other carrying on the wind like wolves on the hunt. Luna awoke with a start, her heart pounding as unfamiliar surroundings came into focus. The cabin's interior was bathed in amber light from a dying fire, shadows dancing across rough-hewn walls. For a moment, panic seized her chest until memory returned. The white man with the knife, the cut ropes, the escape through the forest. She sat up slowly, wincing as her body protested every movement, the wounds from her captivity still fresh and painful. Across the single room, William slept. In a chair, his weathered face relaxed in slumber, but his hand still resting on a rifle across his lap. Luna studied him cautiously. Unlike the settlers who had captured her after killing several members of her band, this man's eyes held no malice. Still, experience had taught her harsh lessons about trusting anyone with pale skin. Outside, the first light of dawn filtered through small windows. Luna rose silently, testing her strength. Food and rest had revived her somewhat, though the memory of being bound to the tree for days after the settlers abandoned her sent a shudder through her body. She moved toward the door, careful not to wake the sleeping man. The nearest Apache settlement is 3 days' journey south. William's voice, gravelly with sleep, startled her. His eyes remained closed as he spoke. "You won't make it alone, not in your condition." Luna froze, hand on the crude door latch. "I know the way," she replied in halting English, surprising William enough that his eyes opened. "You speak English?" "Some words," she acknowledged. "Mission school." "Before." She gestured vaguely outside, unable to articulate the violence that had shattered her childhood. The raid on the mission, her recapture by her own people, then the settler attack that had separated her from her band and led to her captivity. William nodded slowly, rising from his chair with a grimace as stiff joints protested. "Breakfast first," he said, moving to stoke the fire. "Then we can discuss where you want to go." Suspicion warred with hunger as Luna watched him prepare a simple meal of cornmeal mush sweetened with molasses. When he handed her a bowl, their fingers brushed briefly, causing her to flinch away. "Those men who tied you up," William said after they had eaten in silence for several minutes. "They might still be looking for you." Luna's hand tightened around her spoon. "The yellow-haired man, he will not stop." Her voice hardened with fear and hate. "He says I belong to him now." William's jaw clenched at her words. "No person belongs to another," he said firmly, old anger flaring in his eyes. "Not anymore. White man's laws don't stop white men." Luna observed with a wisdom beyond her years. The bitter truth of her statement hung between them. After a moment, William set down his bowl and crossed to a trunk in the corner. He returned with a faded dress and a small pair of boots. "These belong to my daughter," he said quietly, offering them to Luna. "Sarah, she's gone now. Fever took her and her mother 5 winters past." Luna hesitated before accepting the garments. understanding the weight of what was being offered. "Why you help me?" she asked, the question that had burned in her mind since he cut her free. William looked away, staring into the fire as if seeking answers in the flames. "Because it's what Sarah would have wanted," he said finally, "and because it's the right thing to do." The simplicity of his answer seemed to satisfy Luna. She disappeared behind a hanging blanket William had strung up for privacy and emerged wearing Sarah's dress, the fabric hanging loosely on her thin frame. The transformation was striking. In settler's clothing, she could almost pass for a local child, though her copper skin and obsidian eyes would always mark her as different. "We need supplies," William announced, having made a decision during her absence. "I'll take you as far as your people's territory, but we'll need provisions for the journey." Luna's eyes widened. "You would take me home?" "I can get you close." "Enough," he nodded. "But first we need to visit town. You'll have to stay quiet and let me do the talking." Fear flashed across Luna's face. "Town is not safe for me." "We'll be careful," William assured her. "You'll wear Sarah's bonnet to hide. Your face, if anyone asks, you're my niece visiting from California." The girl studied him for a long moment before giving a single, decisive nod. "When do we go?" "Today. The sooner we leave, the better." As they prepared for the journey, loading William's mule with the few items they might be able to trade, Luna paused by the cabin door. "The yellow-haired man," she said softly. "His name is Burroughs. Fletcher Burroughs." William stilled, recognition dawning on his face. "Fletcher Burroughs? The cattle rancher from the South Valley?" Luna nodded grimly. "He kills my people. Takes children." Her eyes met William's, filled with an intensity that belied her youth. "He will kill you too, if he finds me here." William shouldered his rifle with grim determination. "Let him try," he said simply, leading the way out into the crisp morning air. The journey to Pinecrest, the small settlement nestled in the valley below William's mountain home, took most of the morning. As they approached the cluster of wooden buildings that comprised the town's main street, William noted how Luna's posture changed. Her shoulders hunched forward, her steps became smaller, her eyes downcast beneath the bonnet that shadowed her features. "Remember," he murmured as they tied the mule outside the general store. "You're my niece, Sarah. You don't need to speak. Just stay close." The bell above the door jingled as they entered the store, drawing the attention of Mrs. Peterson, the proprietor's wife, who regarded them with poorly disguised curiosity. William was known as a recluse who visited town only when necessary, certainly not with a child in tow. "Mr. Harker," she greeted, her eyes lingering on Luna. "What a surprise to see you with company." "My brother's girl," William explained curtly, placing a list on the counter. "Visiting for a spell. Need some supplies," as Mrs. Peterson gathered the items. The door opened again, bringing a gust of cold air and the town's sheriff, Thomas Grant. The lawman nodded at William before his gaze settled on Luna with uncomfortable intensity. "Didn't know you had family visiting, Harker," he commented, moving closer. "Strange timing, what with all the trouble lately." William tensed but kept his voice level. "What trouble would that be, Sheriff?" "Apache raid hit Burroughs Ranch 3 days back. Stole some horses, burned an outbuilding." Grant's eyes never left Luna's downturned face. "Burroughs claims they took something else too. A girl, Indian girl he'd taken in out of Christian charity." The lie was so blatant that William had to suppress a snort of disgust. "That's so," he managed, placing a protective hand on Luna's shoulder. "Hadn't heard. Mind if I have a word with your niece?" Grant asked, his hand coming to rest casually on his holstered pistol. William felt Luna trembling beneath his palm. "She's shy around strangers," he said, reaching for the parcels Mrs. Peterson had wrapped. "And we've got a long journey ahead. Another time, perhaps." The tension in the store thickened as Grant stepped forward, blocking their path to the door. "I insist," he said, his friendly tone belied by the cold look in his eyes. "Just want to ask her a few questions." What happened next occurred so quickly that later accounts would differ. Luna, sensing the danger, bolted for the door. Grant reached for her, catching the bonnet and pulling it away to reveal her distinctly Apache features. William, reacting on instinct, drove his shoulder into the sheriff's chest, sending the man stumbling backward into a display of canned goods. "Run!" William shouted, grabbing Luna's hand as they burst from the store onto the street, where they found themselves face to face with 3 mounted men, one of whom, a tall figure with straw-colored hair and cold blue eyes, Luna recognized immediately. "Well now," Fletcher Burroughs drawled, a slow smile spreading across his sun-weathered face. "Looks like my property has found its way to town after all." The main street of Pinecrest fell silent as townspeople froze at the sight of the confrontation unfolding before the general store. William positioned himself slightly in front of Luna, his weathered hand finding the rifle slung across his back, without drawing it. "Not yet." "Step aside, Harker," Fletcher Burroughs commanded from atop his chestnut stallion, the animal pawing nervously at the dirt road. "That Apache girl is my property. She ran off after I provided her shelter and Christian guidance." William's voice, when he spoke, carried clearly in the tense silence. "No man can own another, Burroughs. Not anymore." Behind them, Sheriff Grant emerged from the store, his hand resting on his holstered pistol. "This doesn't concern you, Harker. The law's clear on runaways and Indian troublemakers." "The law?" William scoffed, not taking his eyes off Burroughs. "Is the law clear on tying children to trees and leaving them to die?" He raised his voice, addressing the gathering crowd. "That's where I found her, bound with rope that cut to the bone, abandoned in the forest." Murmurs rippled through the onlookers. Not everyone in Pinecrest shared Burroughs' views on the native population, though few dared oppose him openly given his wealth and influence. Burroughs' face darkened with anger. "The savage tried to steal from me after I showed her nothing but kindness. Restraint was necessary until she could be properly disciplined." His cold gaze shifted to Luna. "Come here, girl. Now." Luna's fingers clutched at William's jacket, her body trembling though her eyes remained defiant. "No," she said clearly, the single word carrying across the street. Something dangerous flashed in Burroughs' eyes. He nodded to the men flanking him, who began to dismount. "Take her," he ordered, "and teach the old man what happens to those who interfere with my affairs." William finally drew his rifle, causing the men to pause. "We're leaving," he stated firmly. "Anyone who tries to stop us will answer to this." Sheriff Grant stepped forward, his hand now drawing his pistol. "Put down the weapon, Harker. Don't make this worse than it already is." The standoff might have ended in bloodshed then, and there had fate not intervened in the form of Mrs. Peterson, who emerged from her store with surprising authority. "Thomas Grant," she called sharply to the sheriff, "have you forgotten that your badge means upholding all laws, not just those that favor certain parties?" She turned to address the growing crowd. "I've known William Harker for 15 years. If he says the girl was mistreated, I believe him." From the edge of the crowd, the town's doctor, an elderly man named Elijah Freeman, stepped forward. "I'd like to examine the child," he announced. "If there's evidence of mistreatment, that changes matters considerably." Burroughs scoffed. "This is absurd. The girl is a liar and a thief." "Then you should have nothing to fear from an examination," Dr. Freeman replied calmly. The rancher's face contorted with rage. "I don't answer to you, old man. I answer to the territorial governor, who happens to be a personal friend." "Even the governor must respect evidence," Freeman countered. "Sheriff, I request that you allow me to document the girl's condition before any further action is taken." Grant hesitated, caught between Burroughs' influence and the watching eyes of the townspeople he'd known all his life. Finally, he lowered his pistol slightly. "The doc examines her, then we settle this according to law." William exchanged a glance with Luna, who gave an almost imperceptible nod. He turned to Dr. Freeman. "We accept, but I stay with her during the examination." "Of course," the doctor agreed. Burroughs' face reddened further. "This is outrageous. I won't stand for—" "You'll stand for it or face charges of obstruction," Grant interrupted, finding his backbone as public opinion shifted. "Doc's office. Now, the rest of you disperse." As they made their way to the doctor's small clinic at the end of the street, William kept Luna close, his rifle still ready. He caught her looking up at him with a mixture of fear and something else, a cautious trust that made his chest tighten with responsibility. Inside the clinic, Dr. Freeman gently examined Luna's wrists and ankles, his kind eyes darkening at the deep, infected wounds from the ropes. He documented bruises across her back and shoulders, evidence of repeated strikes from what appeared to be a riding crop. "This child has been systematically abused," he declared, his voice heavy with professional authority. "The wounds on her wrists and ankles are consistent with being bound for days, not hours, as Mr. Burroughs claimed. She's also malnourished and dehydrated." Sheriff Grant, who had observed the examination in silence, cleared his throat uncomfortably. "That's concerning, Doc, but it doesn't change the fact that she's Apache, and there are protocols." "She's a child," William interrupted harshly. "Apache or not." The doctor nodded in agreement as he applied salve to Luna's wounds. "I'm documenting these injuries officially, Sheriff. I'll send copies to the territorial capital if necessary." Grant ran a hand through his hair, visibly conflicted. "Burroughs won't let this go, Harker. You know that." "Neither will I," William replied firmly. Outside, they could hear Burroughs' angry voice as he argued with townspeople. The situation was balanced on a knife's edge. "There's a missionary couple passing through," Dr. Freeman said quietly. "The Johnsons. They work with the Apache bands to the south, have an arrangement with the tribal leaders. They're leaving at dawn tomorrow." He looked meaningfully at William. "They might welcome traveling companions." William understood the doctor's suggestion immediately. "Where are they staying?" "My place," Freeman answered. "Come after dark. Use the back door." That night, as promised, William and Luna slipped through the shadows to the doctor's house. Mrs. Freeman welcomed them with warm food and clean blankets, while the missionary couple, Ernest and Margaret Johnson, agreed to include them in their party heading south. "We can get you within a day's journey of your people's current hunting grounds," Ernest explained to Luna as they studied a crude map by lamplight. "But you must understand, much has changed. Many bands have been forced onto reservations." Luna's face remained impassive, but William noticed how her fingers tightened around the mug of tea Mrs. Freeman had given her. "My mother's sister is medicine woman," she said softly. "She will find me if I reach the sacred mountains." Later, as Luna slept on a pallet in the Freeman's kitchen, William sat with the doctor on the back porch, both men smoking pipes and speaking in low tones. "Burroughs has men watching the roads," Freeman warned, "and he's telegraphed for reinforcements from his ranch. You won't make it out of town using the main trails." William nodded grimly. "The Johnsons mentioned a route through Miller's Pass." "It's treacherous this time of year," the doctor cautioned, "but it might be your only option." He paused, studying the glowing embers of his pipe. "You've taken on a considerable risk for that child, William. May I ask why?" William was silent for a long moment, his gaze fixed on the distant mountains, silhouetted against the night sky. "After Sarah and Elizabeth died," he said finally, "I stopped seeing purpose in much of anything, just existed day to day." He tapped his pipe against the porch railing. "Finding that girl, seeing what had been done to her, something woke up inside me, something I thought had died with my family." "Compassion," Freeman suggested. "Justice, maybe," William replied. "Or just the simple knowledge that some things are plainly wrong, and a man can't call himself a man if he walks away from them." The doctor nodded in understanding. "You should get some rest. Tomorrow we'll test you both." Dawn broke misty and cold as the small party prepared to depart. The Johnsons' wagon was loaded with supplies and medicines bound for the Apache settlements. William secured Luna's few possessions on a horse borrowed from the doctor, then helped her mount behind him. They had nearly reached the edge of town when the sound of galloping hooves shattered the morning quiet. Burroughs and 6 armed men blocked the road ahead, rifles raised. "That's far enough," the rancher called out, his voice carrying on the crisp air. "I'll have what belongs to me." Ernest Johnson urged his wagon forward, stopping within speaking distance. "Mr. Burroughs, we're on a peaceful mission sanctioned by the territorial government. These people are under our protection." Burroughs spat on the ground. "Your mission work doesn't interest me, preacher. The girl comes with me, or nobody leaves this spot alive." William felt Luna's arms tighten around his waist, her face pressed against his back. He leaned forward slightly, whispering, "When I tell you, Slide off and run for the trees. The Johnsons will follow. Don't wait for me. No, Luna whispered, back fiercely. No, leave you! Before William could argue, the confrontation escalated as Sheriff Grant unexpectedly rode up, accompanied by several townsmen, including the blacksmith and general store owner. Fletcher, Grant called out, positioning himself between Burroughs' men and William's group. This ends now. Dr. Freeman's report has been witnessed and signed by 12 citizens. The territorial inspector will be here by week's end. He straightened in his saddle. The girl goes with the missionaries. Burroughs' face contorted with rage. You're choosing the wrong side, Grant. I'm choosing the side of law, the sheriff replied firmly. For a moment, it seemed Burroughs might order his men to fire anyway. The tension stretched like an over-tightened wire until finally, the rancher lowered his rifle. This isn't over, he promised, his cold eyes finding William. Not by a long shot. He jerked his horse around. Pull back, boys. We'll settle this another day. As Burroughs and his men retreated, Grant approached William's horse. You've made a dangerous enemy, Harker. I'd watch my back if I were you. William nodded his thanks. We'll be long gone before he can regroup. The sheriff glanced at Luna, who was watching him warily. Good luck to you both, he said simply, before turning back toward town. The journey that followed tested them all. Miller's Pass proved as treacherous as predicted, a narrow trail winding through rocky terrain where a single misstep could mean disaster. Twice they spotted riders in the distance, Burroughs' men attempting to cut them off, but Ernest Johnson's knowledge of the land helped them evade pursuit. On the third day, as they made camp in a sheltered canyon, Luna sat beside William near the fire, her expression thoughtful as she watched the flames dance. Tomorrow we reach Talking Stone Mountain, she said quietly. My people will be in the valley beyond. William nodded, feeling an unexpected heaviness in his chest at the thought of their imminent parting. You'll be home soon. Luna was silent for a long moment before asking, What will you do? After? The question caught William off guard. He hadn't thought beyond delivering Luna safely to her people. Go back to my cabin, I suppose. Keep cutting trees. Living. Burroughs will not forget, she warned. No, William agreed. He won't. Luna studied his weathered face in the firelight. My people have a saying, when you save a life, that life belongs to you in spirit. My spirit is tied to yours now. William shook his head gently. You don't belong to anyone, Luna. That's the whole point of this journey. A small smile touched her lips. Not belonging like ownership, belonging like family. She placed her hand on his arm. You could stay. With my people. With me. The offer hung in the air between them, filled with possibilities neither had dared contemplate until this moment. Morning light filtered through the canyon, painting the rock walls in hues of amber and gold as William stood at the edge of their camp, gazing toward the distant peaks of Talking Stone Mountain. Behind him, the Johnsons prepared their wagon, while Luna sat cross-legged nearby, weaving a small bracelet from leather strips and colored beads she'd carried hidden in her clothing throughout their journey. It's a protection charm, she explained when she caught William watching her. Apache warriors wear them when facing danger. She tied off the final knot and held it out to him. For you. William accepted the gift, turning the simple bracelet in his calloused hands with reverence before securing it around his wrist. Thank you, he said, his voice rougher than usual with emotion he couldn't quite name. Luna's suggestion from the previous night still echoed in his mind. Stay with her people, begin a new life. The idea was simultaneously terrifying and strangely appealing, a path he'd never considered possible until now. Mr. Harker, Ernest Johnson called, approaching with a map in hand. We should discuss our final approach. The Apache territory begins just beyond the ridge ahead, and we'll need to signal our peaceful intentions properly. As the men conferred over the map, Margaret Johnson sat beside Luna, gently checking the healing wounds on her wrists. These are looking much better, she said kindly. You're a strong young woman. Luna's eyes remained fixed on William. He is good man, she said simply. Saved me. Risked everything. Margaret followed her gaze. Yes, he is, she agreed. Those are rare in any people. Their quiet moment was interrupted by the distant sound of horses, multiple riders approaching, fast from the direction they had come. William's head snapped up, his hand instinctively reaching for his rifle. Riders coming, he warned, scanning the canyon entrance. At least 6, maybe more. Ernest quickly doused their fire. It could be an Apache hunting party, he suggested. Hopefully. No, William said grimly, recognizing the silhouette of the lead rider as the figures came into view. It's Burroughs. Luna stood, her face set in determination rather than fear. He followed us all this way. Get to the wagon, William ordered, checking his ammunition. I'll hold them off while you make for the ridge. We won't leave you behind, Ernest protested. You must, William insisted, his voice allowing no argument. Get Luna to her people. That's what matters now. Margaret rushed to gather their belongings while Ernest prepared the wagon. Luna stood frozen, staring at William with growing panic. In her eyes, You promised, she said accusingly. You promised to take me home. William placed his hands on her shoulders. And you will make it home. The Johnsons will see to that. He gave her a gentle push toward the wagon. Go now, please. The approaching riders were close enough now that they could hear Burroughs shouting orders to his men. William took up position behind a large boulder, rifle ready, as Ernest helped. Luna into the wagon. We'll circle around through the eastern pass, the missionary told William. If you can hold them here for 20 minutes, we should reach Apache territory safely. William nodded. Go, now. As the wagon pulled away, Luna turned back, her expression one of anguish and betrayal. William forced himself to look away, focusing instead on the approaching threat. He had promised to get her home, and he would keep that promise, even if it cost him everything. The first shots rang out as Burroughs' men spotted the departing wagon. William returned fire, his shots precise and measured, forcing the riders to take cover. He wasn't trying to kill, just to delay, to give Luna and the Johnsons the time they needed. Give it up, Harker! Burroughs shouted from behind a rocky outcropping. You're outnumbered and outgunned! William didn't waste breath responding, instead changing position to keep the riders pinned down. The exchange of gunfire echoed through the canyon, minutes stretching like hours as he fought to buy time. A bullet grazed his arm, tearing through his jacket and drawing blood, but William barely registered the pain. His world had narrowed to this moment, this purpose, protecting the girl who had somehow awakened something long dormant within him. Just as his ammunition began to run dangerously low, the sound of distant war cries filled the air. Both William and Burroughs' men paused, turning toward the source of the new threat. From the ridge above, a dozen Apache warriors appeared, their painted faces set in fierce determination as they unleashed a volley of arrows upon Burroughs' men. Among them, William spotted Luna, pointing directly at him from beside a tall warrior, whose elaborate headdress marked him as a person of importance. The girl reached her people, one of Burroughs' men shouted in panic. We need to pull back. Burroughs, his face contorted with rage, fired one last shot in William's direction before ordering his men to retreat. The bullet struck the rock near William's head, sending fragments into his face and momentarily blinding him. When he wiped the blood from his eyes, the Apache warriors had descended into the canyon, surrounding him with arrows nocked and ready. Luna pushed through their ranks, rushing to William's side. You are hurt, she said, examining the wounds on his face and arm. I'll live, he assured her, looking warily at the warriors. You found your people quickly. Luna nodded. They were hunting nearby, heard the shots. She turned to the tall warrior who had followed her. This is my uncle Blackhawk, my father's brother. Blackhawk studied William intensely before speaking in Apache to Luna. She responded rapidly, gesturing toward William and then in the direction Burroughs had fled. The conversation continued for several minutes, other warriors occasionally adding comments that William couldn't understand. Finally, Luna turned back to him. My uncle says you fought bravely. He asks why a white man would risk his life for an Apache girl. William considered his answer carefully, aware that his words might determine his fate. I did what any decent man would do. he said simply. She needed help. I could give it. After Luna translated, Black Hawk approached William, his expression unreadable. He reached out and grasped William's arm in a warrior's greeting, speaking words that Luna translated. He says you have the heart of a true warrior. You are welcome among our people. The tension in the canyon dissipated as the warriors lowered their weapons. Two of them helped William to his feet, supporting him as they began the journey to their camp beyond the ridge. As they traveled, Luna walked beside him, occasionally touching his arm as if to reassure herself of his presence. I told them about Burroughs, she explained. How he captures children from our tribe. How you freed me. They believe you? They have lost children. Many children. They know the yellow-haired man. Her expression darkened. They will be watching for him now. The Apache encampment was larger than William had expected. Dozens of teepees arranged in a traditional circle, with horses grazing in a meadow nearby. As they entered the camp, curious faces emerged to observe the wounded white man being escorted by their warriors. An elderly woman pushed through the gathering crowd, her weathered face lighting up at the sight of Luna. The girl broke away from William sighed, running into the woman's embrace with a sob of relief. My aunt, Luna explained later, as a medicine man treated William's wounds inside Black Hawk's teepee. She thought I was dead. Over the days that followed, William's status within the camp evolved from suspicious outsider to honored guest. His wound healed under the skilled care of the tribe's medicine man, and he began to learn basic words and phrases in the Apache language. Luna rarely left his side, proudly introducing him to various members of her extended family and teaching him their customs. In turn, William shared what skills he could, improving their hunting traps and helping to construct more durable winter shelters. A week after their arrival, as they sat beside the communal fire watching the sunset paint the distant mountains, Luna asked the question that had hung between them since their reunion in the canyon. Will you stay? She asked, her dark eyes reflecting the firelight. With us? With me? William gazed around the camp, observing the peaceful routine of daily life, so different from his solitary existence in the cabin, yet somehow familiar in its rhythms and purpose. I don't belong here, he said gently. Not truly. Luna's face fell, but William continued, however, I don't think I belong back in that empty cabin anymore either. He touched the bracelet she had given him, still secured around his wrist. Black Hawk spoke of a valley to the west, where the boundaries between Apache land and settler territory blur, a place where a few from both worlds have found a way to live in peace. Hope rekindled in Luna's expression. You would go there? We could go there. William corrected carefully. If your aunt and uncle permit it, I could build a cabin. You could learn both ways. Keep your Apache heritage while also learning the skills you might need in the changing world. Luna considered this, her brow furrowed in thought. Like a family? The question caught William off guard, stirring emotions he had locked away since losing Sarah and Elizabeth. Yes, he said finally, his voice rough with feeling. Like a family. 2. Days later, after lengthy discussions with the tribal elders and Luna's relatives, permission was granted. Black Hawk himself would guide them to the valley and help establish relationships with the mixed community that had taken root there. On the morning of their departure, as William secured their meager possessions to a horse provided by the tribe, Luna's aunt approached him, pressing a small medicine pouch into his hand. For protection, Luna translated as the older woman spoke. She says your spirit was wounded like mine, but it grows stronger each day. She says... Luna paused, seemingly embarrassed by her aunt's next words. What? William prompted gently. She says we were meant to find each other. That the Creator sometimes brings together broken pieces to make something whole again. William closed his fingers around the medicine pouch, nodding his thanks to the elderly woman who had entrusted him with her niece's future. As they rode away from the camp, Luna beside him on her own mount and Black Hawk leading the way, William felt a sense of purpose that had eluded him since that terrible day when fever had taken his family. The path ahead was uncertain, fraught with challenges from both the natural world and the human one, But for the first time in years, he looked toward the future, with hope rather than resignation. "Do you think Burroughs will find us?" Luna asked. As they crested a hill, the valley spread out before them like a promise. William considered the question seriously. "He might try," he acknowledged. "Men like him don't surrender easily what they believe is theirs." "I am not his," Luna stated firmly. "No," William agreed, a rare smile crossing his weathered face. "You are your own person, and now you're also family." Black Hawk, riding ahead, pointed toward a distant plume of smoke rising from the valley floor, the first sign of the community that would become their new home. William nudged his horse forward, Luna keeping pace beside him, both of them moving toward an uncertain future that, for all its dangers, held more promise than either could have imagined when fate first brought them together in the Arizona wilderness. As they descended into the valley, the setting sun cast their shadows long across the landscape, no longer separate silhouettes but intertwined, like the strands of a newly woven blanket, stronger together than apart.